Hi, everybody. Hi. We have a slightly smaller group than we expected. They actually moved us to a bigger room, but obviously we didn't need that. But we're going to have plenty of time for questions, which is going to be good. My name's Clay Wesner. Presenting with me today is Mira Mahalaba. We're going to be talking about determining your role within a managed service. So within Dynamics AX7, or the new Dynamics AX, there's been a slight change in how we operate and how the infrastructure of AX operates. So in the past, typically we would ship a DVD or a download, and the partner and the customer would be involved in deploying and managing that infrastructure on-premise. Now with the new AX, this all runs within the cloud. So it sort of changed the relationship slightly, and managing, deploying, and maintaining that instance is actually involving Microsoft a lot more. So we have a variety of different teams. We have support teams and service engineers that actually maintain the environments. But it means processes now like deploying an environment, deploying hot fixes, upgrading environments, refreshing databases, all those types of things that would typically be handled online are now actually involving resources with Microsoft, or leveraging our tooling in within Lifecycle Services to actually do that yourself. Okay? So not everything. So if you have a look, what we're trying to show with that diagram is that there are some things that are just still between a customer and a partner, and some things that are between customer and Microsoft. And then some things, if you're talking about an upgrade or deploying a customization, all three parties would be involved. Sometimes that varies. It might just be customer signing off or approving something, and Microsoft and the partner doing the work. But typically those processes are going to cross all three parties. What we're doing at the moment is we're investing very heavily in Lifecycle Services to make those processes as easy as humanly possible. So removing email and phone calls and all those types of things, and automating as much through an online request process, which is built into Lifecycle Services, which is our online sort of deployment and environment management tool. We're going to go through some of these scenarios in a little more detail today, but at a very high level, the sort of division between what a customer and a partner manages and what Microsoft manages is on this slide. So at the top level, we have things like managing your users within an environment, security, defining your business processes, configuration within those environments, managing your non-production environments, so things like a dev environment or a staging environment, and then doing any customizations or anything like that that you want to maintain with your environment. As we move down into the next layer, we have the application platform and the infrastructure. So this is much more around the monitoring of the environment, diagnostics, SQL performance, hardware performance, mandatory updates, privacy and compliance, all those sorts of things that come along with managing not only an ERP instance, but then also a cloud managed service. And these are all supported and managed by the Microsoft teams. So a lot of these, there's no interaction at all with the customer. There are just things that we do in the background that you don't even need to know about. And some are things that we have to interact with you, get your approval before we go ahead and do them. This is not an exhaustive list, but to give you an idea of those types of processes that we commonly encounter. And as we've had customers move from an on-prem world into AX7, these are typically the ones that get asked about first. How will these types of processes work? Because in the old days, everyone could just go ahead and do this themselves. So I'm just going to pick a couple to talk through here as an example, and then we're going to actually demo a couple for you today so you can have a look as well. So jump to the second one, requesting a deployment of a sandbox. We're going to have a look at in a second. But the example here is this is requesting by the customer, just requesting you on an environment. The Microsoft team goes through, deploys it, configures it, gets it up and running, and then a customer just validates and signs that off. Going something more complex, for example, if you're looking at like a planned or unplanned OS or Azure outages, which occasionally happen, it will be Microsoft actually starting that chain, identifying that there's an outage or an OS update required, coordinating with the customer to get approval for that downtime. Once it's approved, Microsoft then go ahead, take the system offline and apply the updates. So the amount of involvement really depends on the type of change. You can see the one there that typically cross all three are related to where there are application changes. So this, whether it be an application hotfix or a customization that's been developed by the customer or by the partner, typically that involves all three parties because there is a development aspect, there's a testing aspect, and there's also a deployment aspect that the Microsoft team needs to do, okay? So we're going to talk through the first one here, which is about deploying an environment. This is our most common one. As part of the Microsoft subscription, the base subscription, customers have 3 environments: production environment, a sandbox environment, and a one-box build environment. So typically day one, as soon as someone's signed up for AX, they've bought the new AX, they log in, deploying their environment is typically the first thing they're doing on day one. This is managed through an online request process within LCS. So there's no emails. Basically, they go in and just say, I want to request an environment. Customer can provide things like, I want a particular data set restored into it, or I want a blank database. If they have ISV solutions or customizations, they can select those and have those deployed. As soon as they submit that request, it comes through to our service engineering team. Our service engineering team will go through, review the options that you've selected. We go through a deployment process. Once that environment's deployed, customer will be notified it's available within LCS, and then you'll receive access to that environment. You can then go in and add other users and expand that out, start performing your configuration. And this is a similar process, whether it be a one-box, a staging environment, or production. The main difference we have with production is that we typically have a few more questions as we go through, as we want that to be sized appropriately for performance for your environment. But this is one of our simpler processes. It's happening every day. Next one, and this is one of our sort of commonly asked questions from partners and customers at the moment as we've moved into the managing service, is debugging an advanced production issue. The reason this is slightly different with a cloud managed service is all the infrastructure isn't running within a customer's on-premise infrastructure anymore. So access to SQL, access to all the servers, access to all the remote desktops isn't the same as it used to be. So what we've had to do is make these types of processes supportable within the cloud environment without necessarily giving away all the keys to everything that sit within the production infrastructure. We have a couple of things, and I'm going to show you one of these as an example first. We're lighting up a lot of monitoring and health information within Lifecycle Services, and Mira is going to show you that in a second. But the idea here is really that you as a user or an IT pro or a system administrator can actually see SQL performance errors, slow queries, errors that may be getting generated on the back end. And we actually present that up through our Lifecycle Services tool. So you don't necessarily have to have access to all the back-end infrastructure to still do some diagnostic. You can look at telemetry and tracking and things that users are doing with that environment without having access to the background tools. That's a lot of information we've presented within LCS, and we're still going further to do that. The other option then is around one-box debugging. So this is if it's purely a code issue, it's not related to a specific set of production data, we can still have multiple one-boxes attached to an LCS project to run through Visual Studio and actually debug those processes. So what we're going to do first is have a quick look at environment monitoring, and then we're going to, oh no, we're not. I'm wrong. I'm going to talk about this first. My slide deck was right. So this one's got a few more boxes. So what we're talking about here is customers coming in and they've reported an issue in production. First time they report it, this may be slow performance. They may be getting an error on a particular form. Our first thing would be our IT pro or our partner would come in and review the environment monitoring information. See where there crashes, see where there's SQL errors, see where there's slow form loads, or anything along those lines that we can help identify within environment monitoring. Now, if we assume in this scenario that that didn't answer their question, if they did, the process would end here. If it didn't answer their question, they would then actually request a sandbox refresh. So what we do here is we actually replicate the production environment into a sandbox environment, replicate the database into a fresh sort of sandbox environment that can be used for debugging purposes. So it has very similar components, Azure SQL, all those types of things that our production environments have. And what you get there is a debugging one box. So it's a cloud-hosted VM that you can connect to, as Visual Studio and the debugging tools so that we can go in, run those processes, and do that data debugging that is sometimes needed in advanced scenarios. As part of this process, we also get the customer then to approve access as we're looking at then a copy of production data. So we get the customer to go in and actually approve that they're going to give SQL access to this developer or this IT pro that's doing the analysis. Once that's done, the partner then has a sandbox environment with a refresh of production. They can log into this one box, go through, debug their process, ideally identify the issue, and then identify whether that needs data to resolve it or to develop a hotfix or a Microsoft hotfix to actually get that issue resolved. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and have a look at environment monitoring very, very quickly. And I will do that for you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are here at in the LCS home dashboard, the environment monitoring is essentially enabled for all environments. So you see here the production, sandbox, and developer and test. So it is enabled for all three environments. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch production here. So let's take a look at that right here. And what we have within the production dashboard is a link to environment monitoring. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this is going to essentially load all the various machine roles that are available for the specific environment and their status itself. So I have created some activity for Ledger Journal around one timestamp. So I'm going to go ahead and put that timestamp right here. Okay, and I'm going to look at the timestamp within a period of 30 minutes. So I'll go ahead and put that and say submit time. And what you'll see is it'll refresh the user load, the activity load, and the user activity for all the three machine roles in that particular time window that you're looking at. So as you're diagnosing, you can narrow down to the exact time window you're looking at. You can also, in addition to that, give search terms that are relevant. So in this particular case, I'm diagnosing a problem with Ledger Journals. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in and tab, and that should narrow it down further, right? And it should give me where the activities were, for instance, in that particular time period. We can also go ahead and actually select. You can see the activity load here and the spikes. We can actually select a spike and further refresh the screen based on that. So you can get the user load and activity load for a specific time window in a specific spikes that you're looking at. So I'll go ahead and reset that for right now. So this is the user load. You can see the users that were active at that point of time. You can get the activity load with exactly the commands and the activities that happened in each of these machine roles, the two AOS boxes and the BI box at that period of time. You can go further down and, of course, look at the actual user session. So if I expand this node right here, which I thought I did. Okay, there you go. You can actually see the set of activities that were performed at that time. So as you're diagnosing an issue, you can actually see what all set of user activities happened at that time, and there may be instances where you can find if there was a user error where they did not enter a value or they entered a specific value, things like that. So all of that can be diagnosed, and you can look at it right here. You can also look at the raw logs itself. So the exact same window that you've selected, you can go ahead and say view raw logs, and this is going to actually load the set of queries that were performed at that period of time with all relevant information that is available with this particular query itself, and you can further narrow it down as you see fit. I'm just going to go back and show you a little bit about the SQL Insights monitoring that we have recently added. So you can select SQL Insights, and I'm going to go ahead and change. And if you see the spikes here, for example, you can actually select the bar that that's related to your specific diagnosis, right? And you can actually look at the SQL statement that's related to that particular spike also. So that is something that you can do. We also have information on the SQL indexes. I'll just go ahead and change the time here. Let's go ahead and say apply, and I'm going to go into index analysis actually, and let's change the time here to 9/7. And this should actually show you the it should show you the index usage, user scans, user seeks and updates, and all of that relevant information is also available here. SQL now can also be used where you'll get further metrics from SQL itself. So in a sense, the goal here is to sort of provide as much data that you can, given that you don't have RDP access to the actual environment itself. And this should hopefully help diagnose the issue as much as possible. And if that's not possible, then you can go to the flow that Clay showed earlier, where you can restore the production database into Sandbox, and then you can connect a dev environment and debug through it and diagnose the issue itself.
Great. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is, let's say you went through that analysis, whether you're in environment monitoring or you got a debugging one box, you went through and you identified an issue, and you actually then had to deploy a Microsoft hotfix. So in this circumstance, we're talking about a Microsoft hotfix that has been released, so it's not something developed by a partner. Basically, we're coming in here, the customer is reporting an issue through the AX client. So if you haven't had a look at the new AX, we actually have the ability now for customers to log support issues directly within the client. When they do that, we get some cool things that come across with it. We take their telemetry timing, their session IDs, their activity IDs, and things like that. And as that work item or the support ticket gets created then for the IT admin or the partner to investigate, they actually get direct links into the environment monitoring that Mira just showed. So you can actually jump in right when that person was reporting the problem and see what was going on, see if there's something related in the server at that time. They can also, directly from that ticket that gets logged, launch into issue search, which is the way within LCS and for AX to actually find any issues that are known by Microsoft, whether they be workarounds or hotfixes available for them. So assuming in this flow, the customer's logged it through the AX client, our IT admin has gone in, reviewed the issue, they've launched into issue search, and they've found that there is a Microsoft hotfix that's available for that issue. Now, in this case, we're talking about an application hotfix. We have application hotfixes and we have platform hotfixes. Our platform hotfixes are what we call binary hotfixes. They don't require a merging process with custom code, so they're far easy to go through and be deployed. And there's something that you can request to be deployed, and Microsoft can do that for you. With an application hotfix, there's a couple extra steps in the process, because the partner or the IT admin does need to look at that application code and make sure it doesn't conflict with any customizations that you may have within the application. So what you're going to do there is download that hotfix and apply that into a sandbox environment through LCS. Once that's applied within a sandbox environment within LCS, the customer would go in and actually validate that change, test it, make sure they're happy with the hotfix, and then sign off on that hotfix or that package deployment within LCS itself. So we actually keep an audit trail that that fix was tested and that we've signed off on it. At that point, the IT admin or the partner would turn around and say, okay, I'm ready to push this for production, and they would schedule the time that they want that downtime to occur and the hotfix to be deployed. Microsoft would then, during that downtime, take the environment down, go through, apply those packages to all the AOS servers within that environment, restore the environment back up, and release it back out to the customer or partner. This whole flow is managed through LCS, so as I mentioned before, there's no emailing or phone calling to manage this process. It's quite clear, all the information that we need is requested, and as much as we can, it's automated. So in tracking the validation of the hotfix, moving it from sandbox to production, we automate as much of that as we possibly can within LCS. Now, Mira's going to do a demo now on the last 3 steps of this process. So we're assuming the customer's reported it, the partner's investigated, found a hotfix, applied it to their sandbox environment and tested it. The customer's just come in, tested this within their sandbox environment, and they're about to say, yes, I'm happy with it, and I now want to release it into my production environment.
Okay. So we're back at the dashboard. So this is a sandbox environment that I'm in. And like Clay said, we have just installed the hotfix itself. And in this case, you can see the various steps that went through the hotfix, right? You can see the various deployment steps right here and how each step went through. You have a log that you can download if you like. There is a run book that you can also download and take a look at to see the various steps that have been executed. And then, of course, we have the button to say signed off. So at this point, if you're validated and you're good with the entire validation, then you can go ahead and click sign off. And of course, close with issues is you would want to revisit, you want to change something in this particular environment, and then you can go back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and select sign off right now. And what this is doing is essentially it's taking the package that was applied in Sandbox and essentially making it a release candidate for production. So this is automatically, the package is set up to be a release candidate for production at this point of time. You have the option of, even in spite of doing the sign off, if you would like to say that you don't want to make this a release candidate, there is an option where you can go back into the asset library and you can find the specific package itself, and then you can go ahead and say that it's not a release candidate. But the normal flow is that this is automatically promoted to become a release candidate for production itself. So now let's go into the production environment that I have right here. And essentially what we can do is we can go ahead and say maintain in production, and we'll go ahead and select apply updates. So at this point, when I select apply updates, this particular fix that I actually applied was a binary hotfix. I'm going to go ahead and say select the binary hotfix right here, and you will see the fix that we just applied in Sandbox show up right here and be available as a release candidate for production itself. So we can certainly select this now and go into schedule. So we can go ahead and schedule a window that's convenient to us. I guess this is 9:27, and we can schedule a window that's a little after, maybe 6 p.m. So we'll go ahead and do that, 6 p.m., and then you can put in that you want it back online by 10 p.m. So this is the window we are essentially choosing for the download itself, and we can go ahead and say confirm. Okay, must be 5 hours. Okay, so that's 11 p.m. I'll go ahead and say confirm, and then you can say submit request and yes. So once this request is submitted, it's automatically queued into the Microsoft support engineers list of tickets to resolve, right? So they will go back, they will deploy the system. Once the system is deployed, they will get it back into the queue itself. So the window essentially changes here to if you would like to reschedule, for example, or you want to change the package, things like that can be done in the meanwhile. But otherwise, you would, and you can see that the maintain button is disabled here now. So once the Microsoft DSC goes ahead and applies the package, what will happen is we'll get back this to the screen, and you'll get a notification, of course, and you will also see the maintain button activated for you to go ahead with any other kind of maintenance that you would like to do. So that is sort of a nutshell view. One other quick thing I will show is in terms of, let's go back into Sandbox and go ahead and select maintain here. In apply updates, there are multiple options, as you can see here. There is the binary hotfix that we went through. There is the application package itself, which could be an X++ change that you're trying to deploy. There's the retail deployable package. So if you have a retail vertical and you want to deploy the retail components, you can use this. And then we have this other option of a merged package. So you have the option of merging a binary package, an application package, and a retail package together, and then scheduling a single deployment for all of those packages together. So this will hopefully reduce the downtime and also allow you to maintain things together in any cadence that you would like to maintain them. So that's what I had, Clay.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important there, while it looks like there's a few steps in that process, is we're actually not allowing anything to get deployed to production unless it's been deployed to Sandbox first and validated. So while it's a great dev ALM practice that, obviously everyone always adheres to, we're trying to get LCS structured in that fashion as well, so that we as much as possible can protect the production environment. It's why we present the environment monitoring and analytics rather than giving direct SQL access. It's why we have this package deployment process, is because we obviously want to make sure that the availability and the quality of production is the absolute imperative and is always maintained. So I've got one more slide after this, but I suppose the main point for us now is that the big shift for us when we move from on-prem into the cloud service, it is very much a three-party relationship now in managing this online service. So we have the normal support channels and everything else that Microsoft has always had, but with AX7, the addition is really coming in is the service engineering team that are very day-to-day involved with the management of an environment. And the changes within LCS has been, rather than us just publishing information out, LCS has become far more interactive, and it's the way that you're communicating with our service engineering team and our resources to make sure that your environment is maintained. And that's, like I said, from anything from getting an environment refreshing and things like that. Our goal is automation as much as possible. So there are definitely things at the moment that still have people involved with them from our side. But even in the last 6 months, we've had a lot of processes that were manual at the beginning of the year and that are now completely automated and controlled through LCS. So the goal there is automation as much as possible and reducing those downtime windows for the production environments. We'll have Q&A in a second. I know there was one in the front there. Any of these things, we've just talked about a lot of different processes. We have deep dives on all of these this week. So Mira and I are going to be presenting on Thursday a far broader overview of LCS services. So this will be business process management, applying hot fixes, anything and everything within LCS. Tarek, sitting at the front here, is going to be talking about code upgrade and how to do that with AX as well in one of our sessions. How to operate and service in the cloud is on Friday with Christian and Robert. This is going to be a deep dive into basically the environment monitoring, identifying a hot fix and deploying that. They're going to really go into the SQL Insights side of it and understand that a lot more in depth than we did today. And then the last one is another session of Robert's, which is about the ALM process within AX. So this is managing dev one boxes, moving code and packages between those environments, and sort of how do you get to that nice point of where Mira and I were today, where we just said, apply that package. So actually going through that dev ALM process and talking about VSTS as well. I have nothing to say to this slide, but that's for your interest. And so we have at least another 15 minutes now for any questions that anyone might have. You had one earlier and I forgot it. Oh, you have 3. Okay, if you can get to a mic easily, that would be great. If not, I can repeat it. Oh, it needs to go on the recording, but that's fine. I can repeat it. Give it to me. So I don't know what the average is, one of our distinguished people, but it really varies on the type of request. Sure, do you know what the current SLAs are?
So it's 5 hours for the application of the package itself. So the current, and they're continuously looking to reduce that time actually, but currently it's 5 hours for the package application.
Yes.
Yes, today.
Yes, that's downtime.
Yes.
So I think Arif
Go
has
ahead,
something to,
Arif.
this is Arif,
Yeah,
he works
Arif.
with us. He's, no, that's all right.
So for downtime is one thing, but the SLA, what we're saying is for if you have like an outage or critical situation where you actually engage with customer support, they measure their response in hours. So within like an hour, they'll research and get back to you, and then they resolve very quickly. When we're talking about applying, work orders or things like that, we have an SLA to complete the job in 48 hours, and the downtime obviously is much less, like 5 hours or 6 hours.
Sure. Does anyone else have any questions? Or we stick with this gentleman for the moment? Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned the process, the process for creating another sandbox similar to production.
Mm-hmm.
I think this would be I understand that this would be different than the standard sandbox, right?
So with, like, sort of as part of your default pack, when you subscribe to AX, you get a production environment, a sandbox environment, and then a one-box environment. And you can add on additional sandbox environments at different tiers to that.
So you mentioned there would be a performance issue. You want to provision a new sandbox, or is it going to be provisioned into the actual sandbox that the customer is using? And I have other questions about this. Is it going to be charged to the customer as part of the SLA? Is there an approval process around it, or can I just request have an issue with this form open slowly, create a sandbox? Are these things clarified?
So we do have feedback that partners use a dedicated sandbox per customer. What we're looking at right now is that we'll provide one perpetually available sandbox as part of the subscription at no extra cost. But anything beyond the one perpetual one, you'll have to purchase.
And my last question, I could see there's a website that shows that publishes short outages on LCS. I've seen recently on September 15th that it took about 2 or 3 hours. Just couldn't access that. So I'm very surprised that actually that happened. You have customers unable to log in.
So you've noticed that we've published outages on our blog. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or-
I think it's a blog.
Yes. So we have had a few regional network outages that I think in Europe we had an outage. So not every customer was affected. I think we had groups of customers affected, and we did run through our, so we have a process where the organization leadership is then engaged. We went through those processes in those cases, and in that case it was Europeans outage, so the European organization was engaged, and we fixed those very quickly. But so far, our outages have been due to just network issues, nothing on the compute or on the AX side.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Sorry, I should have clicked more. We'll still be around. We're also at the AX booth. If anyone has any questions, you can come up and follow up later. Please fill in your evals, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.